We need education on menstrual cycles for men and women because this affects everybody. I think a great place to start is just the difference between men and women hormonally, right? Men operate on a 24-hour hormonal cycle with testosterone. It's very simple. It's very predictable. It's beautiful. Rises with the sun, goes down with the night, rinse and repeat, right? The 40-hour work week is based on the male hormonal cycle. It just makes sense. It's very systematic. It's very straightforward. Every day can look the same. If you look at the best productivity, guides and the best guidelines for that, it's repeat the same thing every single day. And I think women have gotten very lost in this conversation. I don't know where this happened, but women run on a 28-day hormonal cycle. So we have fluctuations that look like that all month long.
Hello and welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Machbitz. Hey.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Should I introduce myself?
Yes, you can. Absolutely, please.
Hi, I'm Sahar Massoudian. I specialize in MMA strength and conditioning coaching, and also looking at menstrual cycle for women and how that corresponds with exercise. And I love exercise. That's pretty much my whole career and my personality. So that's about it about me.
Okay, well, this conversation's over.
Yeah, that was
Thanks for coming. No, exactly. I mean, but all of those topics are what I wanted to talk to you about. Originally, I wanted to have you come over because I was going to try to do a dating roundtable. Because I did one with a couple of my guy friends. I did one with a couple of my girlfriends. And then I wanted to get everyone together to sort of mix up some feelings. Because I think which we're going to get into, because I know you have some thoughts and feelings on the topic, which is why I invited you, on the current situation between men and women in the current dating market.
Yes.
It's like much different than I think it's ever been before. And I wanted to sort of have that conversation with everyone here, which I'm still trying to work on. Hopefully we can get it together, but it's like 6 people. There's a lot of moving parts.
Right.
But anyways, you're the only one who still decided to show up, which is awesome because we've been training Jiu Jitsu together for a while now. And we follow each other on social. I don't know if I follow you, but I've seen your content.
Thanks, man. Thank you for that.
And all of the stuff you just mentioned, I want to get into with you. So I'm very excited. But I have an important question to ask you before anything else. Yeah. How are you doing? Like, really, how are you doing?
How am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing really good. Yeah, I'm doing what I love, I'm taking a hiatus between, school. So until things ramp up again for me in August, I'm just chilling. I'm having a great time. I'm training all the time. I'm getting to, work on my social media outreach a little bit and coaching people. And yeah, I'm just living life. I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
How am I doing? Doing great. Yeah, I'm doing great. This week I was like sick for like 24 hours, but other than that, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, had a lot of good podcast conversations this week.
Nice. Got
to train Jiu Jitsu a couple times. Not as much as I'd like to do this week, but I aim for 3 times, 3 to 5. Mm-hmm. This week I only got 2 because I can't go tomorrow. We got a baseball tournament. We're in the midst of baseball season. Opening day started today.
Nice.
My girlfriend is out of town, so that's kind of sad. I haven't slept without her since she moved in. Well, I did a couple weekends ago when I was away for a baseball trip. But that's kind of weird.
Yeah. It's gonna be weird tonight.
So I'll take one of her pillows and whatever. it'll be fine.
You have to.
I have to.
Put all of her perfume on it, Yeah.
She does sleep in one of my old baseball shirts every night, so maybe I'll just have to wear that.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to.
But when I'm on the weekend in baseball, we'll be up and it'll be in a hotel, so it already feels weird to sleep in a hotel anyways. But anyways, thanks for asking. Normally, no one usually returns the question.
Kind of sad.
Well, yes and no. I figured they're coming onto a podcast to be interviewed, right? They feel like they can ask a question.
I mean,
but
that's fair, but like.
But I want to make it a conversation.
I care.
You do?
Yeah.
And we see each other pretty frequently.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
But there's not a lot of time in jiu-jitsu for conversation.
Unless you want to get yelled at. I've been there, done that.
Yeah, you and Nancy are always chatting, and Ava.
Yeah.
Just over there having a great time.
It's a great time. It's a great time.
It is.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
We're gonna, by the end of this conversation, hopefully we can convince people to work out more and to train jiu-jitsu.
Yes, absolutely.
So
the best things in life, for sure.
I mean, like, they make your life better.
They really do.
Like, when did you start exercising, and when did it become important to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, so I was born with very minor cerebral palsy.
Okay.
So that affected my left foot mostly. I kind of grew out of the other symptoms as a kid, but
You grew out of them.
I grew out of them. So I had really tight muscles all through my childhood. My mom said like I could barely raise my arms over my head to get my shirt on, like as
Really?
a child. Yeah, and then over time, it what remained was just the left foot, my ankle. I guess I don't know. I was kind of like on the tiptoes of my left foot, and the heel never came down. Had a surgery when I was 9. Heel came down. I was mostly functional after that because before that I could walk, but I would get really exhausted walking, and as you can imagine, running and stuff was really hard too. But after the surgery, I was mostly functional, kind of had to build up fitness and endurance. Basically was in physical therapy my whole life as a kid. Wasn't really able to get into sports because of the limitations that I had. Not just because of the foot, but the mobility, right? I had severely limited mobility, so I could barely like move in the normal ways that people do. But my parents are amazing. They tried to put me in like every sport. It just never really ended up working because I could only do so much. And so, in and out of physical therapy my entire childhood. And then ironically, this is ironic because of what happened later in my life. I hated exercise. Like I didn't want anything to do with it because I had like trauma from physical therapy as a child.
Yeah, put a poor taste in your mouth.
Yes, exactly. But I remember around 2nd, 3rd grade, I started becoming, so right after the surgery, I got more interested in wanting to be fit. And I was like, oh, I don't like my sedentary lifestyle, the way I'm starting to look, all that. So when I was in 2nd grade, I got my first personal trainer. So
No way.
I was 8 years old at the Plano Rec Center with a personal trainer. That lasted for a little bit, but
This is something like you went to your parents and were like,
yeah,
hey, can I get a personal trainer?
Yeah, I was like, I'm getting a little pudgy. Like, can we do something about it? And so that happened for a short period of time, but nothing really happened after that until after my freshman year of high school. I tried rowing for 1 season. I wasn't a fan of putting boats on my shoulders. Like, I was always bruised. It was really awful. But I got into the weight room, and I was like, this is kind of cool. And then through like social media and stuff, I started finding people I really liked, that like the way they looked and the things they did, and I started trying to figure out how to teach myself how to work out. So pretty much after my freshman year of high school, I wanted to start going to the gym, and my issue is consistency, as it is with most people, right? So I was like, okay, what can I do that'll help make me consistent and actually hold me accountable? And so I made a bargain with myself. I said every school day for the rest of this month, you have to, or for 1 full month, you have to go to the school gym after school and work out for at least 30 minutes. And I was like, after that month, because I was like, I'm going to try and build this habit, right? Habits take about a month to build. I said, after this month, if I hate it, I can walk away and find something different, like do Zumba or something. I don't know.
Sure.
And so every day at 4 o'clock when I got out of school, I would go to my school gym and I would do like the elliptical for 45 minutes. And I would just like lift some random weights. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but that's kind of where that all started. And gradually I just, dedicated myself to teaching myself more about it. And what I was really surprised about is that even though I started it more for aesthetic reasons, the real, what kept me hooked was how strong I felt. And like for the first time
like
in
physically
my life,
or mentally?
Yes, physically and mentally, because for the first time in my life, I think my narrative that I'd always been given was like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And that's always how, doctors, especially specialists, like to talk to you sometimes. It's like, you're an object, right? Like I was always objectified and told this is what you can't do, this is what you can't do. And for the first time in my life, I was like, wow, I'm getting much stronger. Like I can see this progress. And I started valuing my body for like what I can do and not what I can't do. You know what I mean? So that was like life-changing to me. And I got addicted right off the bat. I remember like 3 weeks into my month, I was like, I noticed on weekends I was so cranky and I was like really pissy and I was like, what is happening? And then I realized it was like, I'm not exercising. Like that's the one thing that's different. So I literally got addicted. And, I transitioned more into weight training from there. And, I was choosing my major for school. I thought, I thought I wanted to study physics because I really love studying physics.
Physics?
But, I loved studying physics. But then I thought, I was like, but what do I want to do every day, right? I was like, what do I love doing every single day? It's one thing to study it. It's another thing to do it, right? And I was like, I love exercise. And my college counselor was like, well, have you heard of kinesiology? I was like, no, what's that? And she said, exercise science. And I was like, well, I love exercise and I love science, so why not? And I went into exercise science, kind of didn't know what I wanted to do with it. Found out I loved coaching people. Wanted to do a little bit more than personal training. That's when I decided I wanted to do strength and conditioning. So my last year, I graduated a little bit early. I got my CSCS, so Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. Thought I wanted to work with pro or collegiate athletes. Then my last year of my undergrad got into Jiu Jitsu, and I was like, this is really cool. And that was my first sport, my first official sport. I started competing and training really hard all the time, and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, okay, what sport am I going to do if I'm going to do this strength and conditioning thing? My first thought was American football, because I loved watching it. And then I gave it a second thought, and I was like, is that really the best idea for me? 5'2" woman, like, I don't know. And, with my love of jiu-jitsu, combat sports seemed like the obvious answer. And ever since then, I've kind of been pursuing that path. So I'm absolutely in love with it. Yeah.
Because I have some follow-up questions.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So when doctors are telling you that you can't do this, can't do that, and you're a very young person at that time, I mean, you're still considerably a young person, but even more young then, did you ever think to yourself like, oh, they're right?
Yeah, every single time. I cried in every single doctor's appointment as a child. I was like 4 or 5 years old the first time I heard that I was never going to be able to wear heels, and like for me, like I was the kind of girly girl. I refused to wear pants as a child. Like that was me.
Dresses, skirts.
Yes, I only wore dresses and skirts. Like I was like a Disney princess in my head, right? Like that was just my personality. And so like hearing that was heartbreaking, man. Like that stuff sticks with you, and like that's pretty much all I heard my whole life. And I definitely believed it, because these are the authorities, right? I'm a child. What do I know? That these guys that, and my parents tried to get me the best of the best doctors. These weren't like, whoever was available.
Right.
So yeah, it was super disheartening.
Was there conversations with you and your parents, like outside of those offices, like words of encouragement, or maybe this can happen, or this possibility, or, I mean, because obviously you move through that, and you learn that you can do something much more than probably those people thought were capable. So what was that?
Yeah. My parents they're like the most incredible parents I could ask for. Like genuinely, I'm the most blessed person on earth to have them as my parents. They were so encouraging. In fact, they didn't even want to get me a handicap parking tag anymore. They're like, we don't want to put that label on you. You know what I mean? They were super encouraging. Like I said, they tried to get me involved in anything physically, and their belief was, if you set your mind to it, you can do it. And that was my belief as a kid. I remember trying to teach myself how to hula hoop and jump rope and things like that as a kid, and they never once were like, oh, well, the doctor said blah, 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 blah. They really just tried to, keep that in mind when they, talked to me about, exercise, and, the doctor said, you got to wear your shoe braces, or else you might not be able to walk when you're older, things like that. Just, reminders just to be careful, really.
Right.
But besides that, they were as encouraging as they could be. I'm so lucky to have parents like that, but they were incredible. Yeah. They did everything they could for me.
That resonates a lot with me, because I feel the same way about my parents. Just like, because you look at a lot of people in especially today's society, where there's just a lot of single parents, unfortunately, a lot of like dysfunctional homes. And it's like already hard enough to be a parent when you have two people trying to do the job to raise a kid, which is really, it's like the hardest freaking job in the whole world. Right. And no matter what happens, your kid is going to come away with some sort of scars. It's just whether or not those scars are big to potentially have them be traumatized, or how they're going to pass it on, or what they're going to take into their relationships, whatever. All that stuff is going to happen. But like, then to think like, wow, I got these parents, like, or you got your parents. It's like, holy shit, I could have gotten any set of parents or circumstances in the whole world. And so then it makes me feel like a bunch of different ways. One, it makes me feel super blessed and lucky and grateful. But then, there's also a set of like guilt, like, why me?
Yeah, totally.
Like, what, why am I so special? And there's like that toggling feeling, but I think that's an important feeling to have, because that, like, one, it keeps me grounded, it keeps me humble. Not like, oh, I'm the fucking specialist, most special person ever that I deserve. Like, I should have that energy sometimes, because I am incredibly special person, as are you, and we deserve to have the best. We deserve love. We deserve that sort of atmosphere. Yeah. But we also have to recognize that some people don't get that, and how can we sort of build them up and bring them in, and encourage them and see that probably every parent, single or combined parent, did the absolute best they could in the situation they had. And, you know, maybe it just wasn't whatever it was. I don't want to say good enough because it sounds like they purposely did a bad job, and that's obviously not true. So, and yeah, you meet friends, right, who didn't have the same situation as you did, and they react certain ways in different kinds of atmospheres, and they're sort of afraid to do stuff, or they weren't given permission to go after what they want, so they're sort of afraid to like say they want this or need this or they love this, and it's like, it's very intense, and it creates a lot of things. But people can overcome that stuff. It's hard, obviously.
Yes.
But
really hard.
Yeah, I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, totally. I think that's such a good point. I don't think a lot of people think about, you know, how lucky they are to have really great parents when they do. And I think that's such a good point that you brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because with my parents, it's interesting, right? Because they lost as a child. You know, my sister passed away in 2018. You know, and anytime parents lose a child, they immediately think that they're the worst parents that have ever existed on
Right, they
on
internalize
Earth.
it. Yeah.
Right, because it's their fault. No, you know, parent should ever have to bear their child. Like it shouldn't. Like it's the fucking worst thing in the whole entire world.
Right.
And then when it does happen, it's like, whoa, I obviously did all of the wrong stuff and didn't do anything right over the years that she was alive. And it's like, no, you didn't. You're still the best. Yeah. You did the best you could, and you did everything you could. And trying to relay that to them is hard, but you know, we're doing it together over the last 4 years. And I say this a lot on this podcast, but having my girlfriend Ree come into our lives has been such a light and a joy, because it gives my parents something to look forward to, right? Yeah. Like, oh, what if they get married? Ooh, what if they have kids? Yeah. Ooh, we'll actually be a part of something and we can do something together. We have something to look forward to, you know? And sometimes I feel like I'm putting too much pressure on Ree because she has to be this, she is this thing.
Right.
But, you know, it's just, that's part of our family. It's our dynamic. It's what it's always going to be. Yeah. So I say all that to really say that there's, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's, you know, I don't really love the phrase everything happens for a reason, but if you work hard enough and you put in sort of the patience and the effort and the time, you can sort of come up with a reason that's worth living for. Yeah. Not it's sort of like this random spiritual thing that's going to like drop in your lap and it's going to be like, yep, that's it. Here it is. No, it's like you have to sort of cultivate it through living your life still and choosing to get up every day. Yeah. And so to any of those parents who may be in a similar situation, or they're just struggling or feel like they're not doing the best they can, you are. Yeah. And if you're not doing the best you can actually, then you got to figure that out too. Then you got to step up to the plate and figure out why you're not doing the best you can. Do you have to tweak this, tweak that? Do you have to take some time for yourself? Do you have to start doing exercise and jiu-jitsu so you can cultivate the best version of yourself and give that to your kid and all that stuff? You know, because I'm talking a lot, but I also think about it a lot as a coach, and I'm sure you do too. Yeah. You know, because it's an honor and a responsibility to have someone trust you with whatever they're trusting you with. Right. You know, their exercise. Yeah. As with an MMA fighter, it's like their whole life is on the line every time they step into the cage. Yeah. So, yeah, what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think with pro athletes, that's kind of the difference. Because, I mean, I wouldn't even say that, because the thing is with the general person too, you know, they're coming to you, they trust you, and they're putting that responsibility in your hands. And the thing about exercise, it's inherently dangerous, right? My parents love to tell me, like, you have such a good brain, why do you do jiu-jitsu? Like, you could get hurt. And I'm like, that's hilarious. But like, honestly, the risk of any physical activity is serious injury, you know? And so if you're not careful as a coach, and that's what scares me a lot these days about the fact that you can get a, you know, personal training certification in 2 months from reading a book and go train people, is it's a serious risk. Mm-hmm. Exercise is a serious risk no matter how you look at it. And so I think about that every time I'm programming, whether it's for an athlete or for one of my Gen Pop clients, because it's just such a valuable thing that they're putting in your hands, right? This person could easily go online and like YouTube a few exercises and put something together and hope for the best. But they came to me and said, you know, I'm trusting you with my outcomes, so here you go. And then it's my responsibility to, you know, help to make that happen. I think what's really cool with athletes specifically in MMA, you know, jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, you actually get to see the fruits of your labor in a different way. You know, with Gen Pop, a lot of it is about aesthetics or about health, which is cool. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, That's a normal part of everyday life with these athletes. You know, like you said, that's their career,
Mm-hmm.
that's their whole life. And so it's really cool when you get to program for an athlete and then see them go out and perform the best they absolutely can, and you know, come back to you and say, wow, I really felt the difference, you know, from this exercise that we've been doing, or I really felt the transfer from this. That's like the most fulfilling feeling to me, because it means that I really get to do what I love, and it's actually helping, you know, somebody's career. You know, them helping my career is furthering their career, and I think that's such a cool relationship to have. And that coaching relationship, it's really unlike anything I've ever experienced. I'm sure you can speak to that with your kids, though. I'm sure it's a little bit different because they're, you know, younger, so you're kind of their mentor as well, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting to see how how much they actually watch what you do. You know?
Yeah.
Like 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, that's like the age that I've coached. They listen to the words. They try to, right? But they mostly see how I act, how I treat people, how I respond to when things go wrong potentially. Do I throw my clipboard? Do I slam dirt? Do I throw my hat? Do I yell? Okay. If I do or if I don't, that's how they're going to react after something goes wrong as well. So why am I getting mad at them for throwing their helmet into the dugout when I threw my clipboard on the ground? They're just watching who they believe to be their mentor do the same thing. Right. Now their mom tells them to go do the laundry. They don't want to. And they're screaming at mom. Why are they screaming at mom? This has nothing to do with baseball. Well, they watch someone they love and look up to scream at them when they didn't want to do something. Yeah. All of these things have an impact on these kids. That's why social media can be so great and so not great at the same time. Depends on who they're watching and who they're consuming and how much they're consuming. But if you're a coach or a person who's around young people, we're not going to be perfect. Of course not. That's never a goal. But we can do our best to try and line up our words with our actions, like the best we can. And if we can't do that, then we need to not be around young kids, because then we're just reinforcing that we can say whatever we want and not have any accountability for what that is. That's what social media is. That's what it's perpetuating is. You can have all sorts of opinions, and your success is, or your word is based on opinions, not on fact, not on action. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's not good for anyone. So yeah, I take a deep responsibility in coaching these young kids. And it's not like a money making full-time. It's like, I just do it because it's like, I want to do it. And I want to spend this weekend in Houston, like 15 hours with them on the field, you know, like figuring it out. Things are going to go wrong. They're not going to do great. They're going to do great. We're going to play a great team. We're going to play like all these things could potentially happen. How do we respond? Great. Now they get into a real life situation and their girlfriend breaks up with them for the first time. Okay, it's not a baseball game, but they can be like, all right, well, I know how to respond when bad things happen. Take a deep breath. I step back. I think about the situation. Okay. Whew. Then we go forward. Now, that's why I think sports are so important, because they're a real life application to all of these things. They're, I don't know how many of these kids are going to play professional baseball, right? If any of them, but hopefully they play long enough where they get to learn the lessons that are applicable to their real life. You know, like you learned by just the situation that you were put in. Like the situation I'm in is not the situation I have to be in forever. Like what a valuable lesson to learn. Yeah. But you have to go through the trenches for that shit. Like you have to fucking go through the trenches like you did. You know, but it's turned out that you have this sort of mindset that you have because of that. You know, who knows if probably would have turned out this way if you didn't go through that. Something else probably would have happened because life just hits you like that. But, you know, this is where we're at. Yeah. And most kids nowadays are quitting youth sports by age 11.
Wow, really?
11.
So they're not even playing through high school anymore. Mm-mm. What?
Nope.
Why? Do you know why?
It's for a multitude of reasons, but mostly it's because the car ride home sucks. Yeah. The car ride home sucks, and most kids would rather be like there was a study done that asked what American youth want to be when they grow up, and the answer was influencer. Not, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I wanted to be an astronaut. Like, it's influencer. That's the answer.
Wow. That's complete, like, whoa. because I was really the first generation that like had social media in my like right before I was a teen, you know, and even like we don't think like that, you know, and then this newer generation is just completely different.
It's putting in the work, or it's getting all of the success without having to put in any of the work.
Yeah, and they don't understand that influencing actually takes a lot of work to like get there. Like even from my little excursions on social media stuff, I'm like, man, this is a lot of work. Like taking videos and editing videos, and they just make it seem so effortless. I can understand why kids are like, yeah, why would I go to school? Why would I, go to vocational school? Why would I do anything when I can just, post videos and have one viral video and become a millionaire?
And there you go. Every brand in the whole world's going to hit me up, and I can do this and I can do that.
Exactly. That's crazy.
Yeah, but if you aim to become an expert in one topic and then want to speak about that, that's awesome. But you have to actively put in the work to become an expert in that field.
Right.
And then you can talk about it anytime you want.
Right.
But there has to be some serious effort involved in anything that you do to make it something that's worthwhile. And so, yeah, we have to, not have to, but I think it's important that we encourage kids to play sports.
Also there's a concern about the sedentary behavior with that, right? Like, because what's the stat? It's like by 2050, like half of the U.S. is going to be overweight or something like that, if not already, or obese. I don't know the exact statistic, but like we're well on our way. And, at least what we used to have, when I was in high school, like I feel like a grandma, back in my day, kids, they went through high school at least with at least one sport, if not three, what I mean? And then they'd get to college and then they'd have to figure out how to work out on their own and all that. And I think that's where I had a slight advantage is all my friends came to me, they're like, how do you work out? Like, I've been playing sports my whole life, I don't know how to work out. But now it's like, if they're not doing that from 11, what kind of habits are they building now at home? If they're not doing sports, what are they doing? Going home and doing nothing? Scrolling TikTok? That's terrifying.
There's no free play. There's no creativity. There's no going outside with our friends and just saying, hey, you have 3 hours, go do whatever.
I'm scared.
It's tough.
I'm scared. Like, I'm scared to be a parent for that reason too. You know what I mean? Like, how do you prevent your kid from becoming an iPad baby? When I've heard stories of like parents who did keep their kids off of technology, they go to school and they don't know how to use a computer, and now they're behind because they don't know how to use a computer. So it's like, what do you do? There's so many burning questions.
It's tough. You sort of just got to pick one and say, this is what I believe. And hopefully it works out for the best. Like we were talking about at the beginning, right?
Yeah, that's all you can do is be the best parent you can.
If you're a parent, you're making the best choice you possibly can make.
Right.
But back to coaching.
Yeah.
Do you think the coaching part, I think with pro athletes, it's specifically about the results because they're geared towards that.
Yes.
They're not super worried about the relationship piece.
Yes, sure.
They want to not hate you, but they mostly care about if you're going to get the results in for them.
I've actually had the opposite experience.
Really?
When I was in Florida, I got to intern at the Drew Strong Performance Gym. Phil Drew is an incredible strength and conditioning coach. He works with Poirier and has worked with a lot of the big names in Florida. And my experience there was absolutely incredible. I got to work with, I got to kind of take over the off-camp athletes.
Yeah.
So I got the off-camp fighters, and they became like my little family. Like we all looked forward to seeing each other, and we always had this like, we were teasing each other the whole time. I was giving them shit, they gave me shit. Like it was just such a fun relationship to have. And all my coaching experiences have been like that, like really building that relationship. That's the interesting thing is like, I think strength and conditioning coaching and personal training have a lot in common with that. You'd be surprised how far you can get just by building a personal relationship, especially with something like strength training, because you have to spot your athletes. They have to trust you. They have to trust you. You're monitoring their form. You're making sure that they're not getting hurt. And so having that kind of like friendship relationship with them, it makes all the difference, because not just for you, but for them, it gives you something to look forward to. It's not just like a robotic, like do this, do that, do that. And actually, I will say, I think that's one of the advantages to coaching like individual combat sport athletes instead of like a team sport. Because I've heard I remember in undergrad, a lot of like speakers we'd have come and talk to us, a lot of them did like pro or collegiate strength and conditioning, but because it was a team sport, It was very like systematic. It was always the same. You know, they have an on season, they have an off season. It's very clear cut, straightforward. I don't know if you remember from, you know, your college experience, but like most of them got bored.
Right.
Honestly, everyone was like, yeah, I went into personal training because strength and conditioning was boring. And the beautiful thing about combat sports is like you're working with individual athletes and all their needs are so different, especially with MMA. You know, MMA, you're combining like 4, 5, 6 sports into one. And so you have to think about, you constantly have to sit here and you're figuring out this puzzle of how do I fit in all the work that this athlete needs to do in this short period of time? How do I prep them for a fight? Maybe it's on short notice. Maybe you have 8 weeks out. Maybe you have 16 weeks out. Maybe you don't even see them for the entire off season. You know, maybe they only come to you during off season. Like, what are you going to do with your athlete? And so in that sense, it's kind of like working through a puzzle. And that's what I love so much about it. I get to sit down and program and be like, okay, here's my calendar. We're this many weeks out. We need to get this, this, and this done. That means we need to ramp up here and here and here. And it's just like this puzzle that I'm putting together. So I think in that sense, just because, you know, even if I'm doing a group type of coaching situation, I still have this like one-on-one relationship with the athlete that I think is so special. And that's part of why I chose not to continue in academia after my master's. You know, I really gave thought again to that concept of what do I want to do every day. And my favorite part of doing my thesis was talking to my study participants, you know, and interacting with them. And during my master's, I TA'd a class for personal training, and I loved, you know, interacting with my students and teaching them how to coach people. And that's why I really decided, like, that's going to be my focus. And so now I'm going to physical therapy school so I can kind of combine that with strength and conditioning. So I can always continue working with athletes and really being able to build that one-on-one relationship. So I'd say that's actually one of my favorite parts of coaching. For me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, where I was going was like in personal training, I think it's all relationship building. But
you're kind of their therapist in a way. Yeah.
A lot of times. Yeah. Well, you're not going to get someone to be motivated and hold themselves accountable if one, you haven't created a good relationship, or you haven't dug enough deep into the layer why they're working out.
Right.
It's not just like, I want to drop 25 pounds. Okay, well, sure. But what? And once you get there, you've built a relationship. Now that person understands what they're aiming at. You're holding them accountable. So that relationship is super important. But with the pro athlete, they know their why. They have their motivation. Right. But I guess the relationship you're building is that you trust me in this, and I know what I'm talking about. And if you stick to our program that I've spent hours on figuring out, like, you're going to get better at your deficiencies. I'm going to make you stronger in these areas. We're going to make you faster, better. Everything is going to be improved because of this thing that I'm doing. So our relationship is important in that regard. Okay.
And the other thing about that, I should add, you know, a lot of these old school combat sports coaches, you know, especially in wrestling, Jiu Jitsu, MMA is a little bit newer, but they don't believe in strength and conditioning, right? Especially when you consider, like, MMA has, like I said, like 3 to 6 sports included in it, right? Imagine how many training sessions these athletes are doing every day.
Yeah.
And then to convince them, like, hey, you should pay me money to come, you know, work on the stuff you're not good at. Oh, is it going to, you know, directly improve my takedowns? Well, no, not like, you're not going to drill takedowns, but we're going to be, you know, doing all these things that are going to help you be so much more effective and efficient in doing that. It's kind of a hard bargain to make, especially when a lot of these, you know, we know pro MMA, you know, they're not paid nearly as much as they should be.
Right.
That's another conversation for another time, maybe, but
Now too.
You know, yeah, maybe now, who knows? But you know, that's, in and of itself, I think that's an important place for a relationship within that coaching situation that I think is just unique to that sport. You know, with your average ball sport, I think it's pretty well established that we need strength and conditioning.
Right.
But for some reason, it just has not transferred over to combat sports yet. So
yeah, it's so interesting because the injury prevention is like paramount. Like, if my knees, my hips, my glutes, my ankles, my shoulders, my rotator cuffs, if they're all stronger, I'm better off.
Exactly. And that's kind of where my idea of like rehab and strength and conditioning came in, because I was like, okay, if we can't convince these people that they need strength and conditioning just for injury prevention alone, maybe like the injury will provoke them to get into, you know, working on themselves to improve the places where they need to, so that this doesn't happen again. So
yeah. But I understand, like, if you're like an up and coming MMA fighter and you only have a certain amount of funds to be allocated to a certain amount of things, you're going to do it to the things that you deem matter the most, which is like working on your kicking, your punching, your takedowns, your jiu-jitsu, the stuff that's like happening inside the ring.
Right.
Now, do I have an extra $400 a week to pay for a strength and conditioning coach? No, because I need to eat properly.
Exactly.
I need to be able to sleep. I need to have my recovery protocols. So I understand all that. I've been a struggling, you know, whatever you want to call it, like professional wrestler.
Right.
Like when I was making $5 a show,
Oh my God.
you know, trying to get from city to city, figuring out how to eat okay so I could perform and look aesthetically pleasing.
It's bare minimum at that point.
You know, like how do I get a hotel room? Do I just sleep in my car?
Yeah.
Okay, I have my own sheets. I have a pillow. I'll probably get a better night's sleep here. Okay, I can get some ramen. I can cook it at the gas station. Like, how do you figure all of this out? Okay, now I have a Planet Fitness membership. That's $10 a month, which means I can work out all across the country. Right. Okay, I still get my workout in so I can have a pump for the show. It's like, you just figure it out.
Yeah.
And then as you sort of climb up, you're like, okay, what do I need differently? Okay, now I can sell some merchandise because I can have some inventory. Ooh, now I can eat a little bit better. I can get a meal plan. I can figure out what I want to bring on the road. Oh, I can get a cooler so I can bring my stuff on the road with me. And then, so it's probably the same way for the MMA fighter. Okay, I've won a couple fights. I'm moving up in the ranks. Okay, if I'm moving up in the ranks, that means I'm fighting better fighters. How do I elevate my game? Okay, I need a strength and conditioning coach.
Right.
Because my knees are weak and my punches can be a little stronger and my hips are a little tight, so I'm not getting enough rotation or whatever the case may be. But yeah. Totally. So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. And that's really the struggle of it. You know, it's like I don't fault anybody for that either, because what are you going to do? You know, you got to do what you got to do. At the same time, it's like, please, if the sooner we start, the better. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm really hoping. That's why it's like my mission now is like I want to be able to make this accessible. You know, I know a lot don't have insurance or whatever, but even if you do, you know, maybe you can at least get in the door. We can work on some things and work our way up. So that's really my hope. I really hope that I can like help the community out in that way, because it breaks my heart to see so many fighters who just are not physically prepared. They're physically prepared in some ways, but not in others. And that shouldn't be a decision that they have to make, you know? So. Yeah.
Do you think, these fighters trust you more because you're in the trenches doing jiu-jitsu?
Yes and no, like in a way maybe, but at the same time they're like, oh, it's just jiu-jitsu. It's very different. It's very different than striking, and I understand that, you know. But I think, and honestly, my take is that any coach should understand the sport of their athlete. You know what I mean? And that's usually what you see with strength and conditioning coaches. That's part of the reason why I gave up on my dream of coaching American football players. Is like I've not had any experience in football. You know, I watch it for hours, but. And I will say that's maybe easier to understand the biomechanics of it because it's pretty, it's more straightforward and it's something that you can watch and analyze. But I think combat sports are very unique in that very few practitioners actually understand what's happening in the octagon. You know what I mean? And having at least half of that and being able to understand the rest of it and, you know, a lot of it is also communication. I can easily talk to my fighters and be like, hey, what does this feel like? Or can you modify this exercise to make it feel more like this kind of kick? Or I can have conversations like that so that we work together to develop what's best for them, you know? But I think it does give me a little bit of credibility in that, like, I kind of know what you're going through. Like, I don't really know what you're going through, but like,
a little bit.
A little bit of it, right? An important piece of it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah, me too.
What has jiu-jitsu taught you about life? How's made your life better?
That's a loaded question.
Great.
I think one really... Okay, so I should start at the beginning. So jiu-jitsu, like you said, was my first sport. I never participated consistently in a sport before that. I never competed in a sport before jiu-jitsu. And the reason I actually got around to starting jiu-jitsu is because it was really weird. It was like one summer, like 6 people in my life were all of a sudden talking about jiu-jitsu, like close people in my life. And I'd like never really heard of it before then. I was like, that's kind of weird. And then at the gym I used to train at, the lifting gym I used to train at, right next to it, there was a ATT that opened up, American Top Team, Dallas. This was in 2019. And so everyone was like, oh, you should try it. I was like, you know what, maybe. So I went back to school and I decided to try it. I looked into it. I was like, oh, this is all on the ground. And I was like, that's perfect for me because I don't have very good balance because of on my left foot, I don't have good balance because of everything that's happened. I'm only on the outside of my foot, whatever. So I can't, stand-up sports are really hard for me. So I was like, this is perfect. We're rolling around on the ground. Like, I can do that. Of course, I know now that jiu-jitsu requires a lot of mobility. right? I didn't really know that going in, and it was something I figured out as I went along. So I got hooked, right? I got hooked. I went to my first competition. It was like a little collegiate club competition. We went to San Antonio, I think. And this is when I was training at UT Jiu Jitsu. And I was like, this is, I was 2 months in. I really thought I was the shit. Like, I was like, this is great. I'm going to do so well. Like, I'm just going to wipe the floor with this girl. I got Americana'd in like a minute.
Oh.
It was really rough. It was not what I was expecting. I made the mistake to never get stuck in that position again. But it was really disheartening because I think what I had subconsciously built for myself was like, this is my chance to prove to myself. You know what I mean? This is my chance to prove to myself that I can be just as good as anybody else. And it was a very subconscious thing. It was very, very like under the surface. And back then I wasn't very much into, self-development or whatever you would call that. I wasn't very self-aware at the time. And it took years of competing, not years, 2 years, two and a half years probably, of competing, did well in, one tournament, sucked at the rest of them. Jiu-jitsu, you know how jiu-jitsu is. Jiu-jitsu, for anybody who doesn't do it, it's like this.
Yeah.
One day you're on top of the world, the next day you're like, why do I do this? And every day you say, why do I go in to get my ass beat? And you keep going back for some reason. And so, countless tears, and 2 years later, I was having a conversation with our professor, Ricardo, at Royal Art, and this was, I think, before I moved to Dallas, and I had just competed in the IBJJF Dallas Open. This was March of last year, so this was last year, before I moved here. And, I was talking to him about how disheartened I was, and he asked a question. He's like, why do you do this? Why are you competing? And I really thought about it, and that was the first time I realized, I'm doing this to prove to myself that I'm just as good as everybody else. I wanted to be world champion. I wanted to be like a professional. Like I had that, like, not that I was only training jiu-jitsu and nothing else because I was in school, but I was like, I'm going to give this everything I got and hope it works out. And it was really in that moment where I realized this isn't coming from a place of like, I'm doing this because I love this more than anything, because I did love jiu-jitsu. But it got to the point after that first competition, or that was my second blue belt competition, and I was a fresh blue belt, where I realized this is making me hate jiu-jitsu. Like, I didn't want to do it anymore. And after studying sports psychology and, being like mentally ready, not being physically ready was the most detrimental thing I ever did to myself. Competing when I wasn't physically ready. Because I was like, okay, my mind is right. So like, what, my jiu-jitsu just sucks. Like, I'm just a shitty jiu-jitsu player. And that made me not want to train for 2 weeks until I came back to Royal Art. I had this conversation with Ricardo. And it really made me understand, like, why am I doing this? And so to me, it was weird because I always saw it as a step forward. I always saw jiu-jitsu as like, this is my way to overcome this condition that I have. And that conversation really just opened my eyes to, not everything has to be me proving myself.
Right.
And maybe I'm trying a little bit too hard to heal these wounds that I have by, plastering over them instead of actually healing them. And so I really owe all of that knowledge of, what's really going on in my head to jiu-jitsu because of that, because it really made me face that in a way that I didn't think it would. Where it ended up being less of the, the story you see in movies and more of like something that, even though I physically took a step back, I mentally took a step forward. And ever since then, I've been training for fun. I've been training to have fun, and I've been enjoying it more than anything. I've been learning more than ever. And I do want to compete again, for sure. I'm definitely going to compete again, but I'm not afraid of getting my ass kicked anymore. And I'm doing it because I know that it's something that I love doing. I do it for myself now, not to prove anything to anybody else or to myself even. So, yeah.
Wow. Incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
How has that knowledge of yourself translated into other areas of your life? If it has, relationship wise or other things that you want to go after. And
I'm a very type A person. I'm a very like high overachiever, and I definitely burnt myself out with my master's. And that seems to, I noticed that was a pattern with me. And that's something that I noticed with this whole jiu-jitsu situation, just the burnout of it. And like realizing that my place is not to constantly push myself all the time, that desire to prove myself, it wasn't just in jiu-jitsu, it was in everything. And mostly stemming from a comparison issue. You know what I mean? Insecurities and comparison. And so I think now, whenever I think about something that I want to pursue or something that I want to accomplish, it becomes a lot more a question of, am I doing this for the right reasons? You know, am I doing this because I want to prove myself wrong? Am I doing this to show so and so that I can do whatever? Or am I truly doing it because it's going to be good for me, you know, in whatever way, whether it's financially, physically, mentally, spiritually. And that perspective changes everything, because you really start doing things to improve your life instead of just to, for some arbitrary reason you came up with in your head that literally nobody cares about. No.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it allows you to become the architect of your own life.
Exactly.
Instead of allowing other people to design your life based on what you think they're thinking about you.
Yes.
And that's even complicated to say out loud. Imagine having your brain trying to compute all of those things and then trying to go out and do it, especially if it's something hard. Your body is not fully in line with that because it's not doing it for whatever sort of reason is what's actually meaningful to you. So, man, learning that lesson is powerful.
Totally.
So you are the active participant and the creator of your own life.
Yeah, I try to be as much as I can whenever I can bring that to my forethought,
Amazing.
Easier said than done, but
of course,
it's so worth it.
Of course, but at least having that knowledge that it is possible and true can help, even when sometimes we're looking at social media or looking at someone's life and being like, I could do that, or maybe I should do that, and in the back of your mind, you've already fought the battle of knowing that you can be the architect of your own life, so you can fight it again. But exactly. Comparing ourselves to others is not. If we're comparing ourselves to others and it's weighing us down and making us feel like shit and not motivating us to do anything, but sometimes we need that little kick, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's from people that we know.
Yes.
I mean, it could, right? We don't know most of the people on social that we follow, but sometimes we need that. Oh, okay, there's that motivation I need.
Yes.
Right. And so, I'm sure you follow Jocko, right?
Yeah.
I'm not comparing myself to him or his jiu-jitsu, but the way he runs his businesses, the way he's cultivated himself, his leadership company, right? The way he talks, I want to compare myself to that in a way that it's going to make me get better.
It's so interesting that you say that, because it made me think of that saying that you are the average of the 5 closest people to you, right? And I think that's a dichotomy between the in-person relationships and the social media.
Yeah.
Because social media can give you, paralysis, because you just look at these people, you're like, oh my God, they're so far ahead of where I am, and of course you only see the highlight reels. And that's one of the reasons I've been trying to stay off of social media. Every time I do, I feel better. I know that for a fact. In the midst of all the TikTok drama, I'm like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what's better. I mean, that's a different issue, probably more political than anything. But in terms of well-being, is social media a great idea? It certainly can be, like you said, if you have the right mindset going forward. But, with people that you're surrounded by, it's kind of a different effect, isn't it? Right? You see people that you actually relate to, and you know more about their life, and that can positively influence you, give you that little kick in the butt, and be like, okay, look at the people around me, look at everything they're doing, and I'm, sitting at home watching TV all day. Maybe I should go do something, I just thought that was interesting. Just
absolutely.
Mind, yeah.
The 5 people you surround yourself with, the 5 podcasts you listen to most often, that stuff is important, right? It's not only the consumption of your food, but it's the consumption of knowledge and ideas and insights and mindset, and what sort of stuff are you consuming in that domain? Because that's going to either tell you that you can do it or you can't do it.
Totally.
And that's powerful stuff. But anything else that you want to touch on about jiu-jitsu?
Man, jiu-jitsu is great. Everyone should do it. It's terrible for your body, but would you agree? How do you feel about that?
That is terrible for your body?
How does your body feel?
I feel better than I've ever felt before.
Are you for real?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because I still have limited mobility, but I'm constantly in pain.
Well, I spent 6 years falling down. And if you're not wrestling in sort of these really big companies, the rings we wrestle in are not nice. So it's you have the 4 beams, right? Sort of like a boxing ring. Then you have 16 poles that go across. And then on top, you just have wooden boards. So
it's wood?
There's wooden boards. And then on top of the wooden boards, it's supposed to be a nice mat, similar to a gymnastics mat. Similar to a jiu-jitsu mat, or if you fall on your back, it doesn't hurt that bad, but it still stings. A lot of the time, it was just carpet. So carpet over a piece of over wood that's nothing. It's like falling on the ground.
No.
So a lot of these shows that just don't have the budget or didn't care about their wrestlers enough to get a good ring, that's what we're falling on. And we're doing a fall break. That's how it's called a bump in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
It's a fall break. It's the same thing. So you're doing that, however many times a match, 4 nights a week.
Oh God.
And sometimes there's weapon involved, there's steel chairs, and all that stuff is real. And you just get hit in certain places where it's not making permanent damage. But you just have sort of reoccurring trauma and car crashes on your body over and over and over and over and over again. And
what did you do to combat that?
I mean, I did a lot of stuff. Like I did mobility and stretching and yoga and ice baths and saunas. I mean, I knew how to take care of myself, but you can only do it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So then like COVID happened and I was able to sort of get my body back. And then I was only wrestling like once, maybe a weekend at the tail end of my career. So I was able to do that. And then I sort of changed my workout structure a little bit. And then I started doing Krav and then I started doing Jiu Jitsu. And so it's just like, that's helped me like loosen up a bit. My neck is a little tight because sometimes we get caught in some things and I try to get out of it, but when I should just tap. But other than that, I feel great.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome.
But it's only because I've felt way worse before. So maybe in comparison, I still don't feel great, but
I don't know. A lot of people are like, oh, you should feel great. You're 24. And I'm like, yeah, but were you like a lot of people saying that weren't doing jujitsu when they were 24. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure I feel just as awful as you do. Like, because we're doing the same thing. That plus the limited mobility, but it's one of those things that like, I don't know if you can speak to this too, like you really don't know why you keep doing it. Like, but it's like, if you just told somebody on the street, they'd be like, why would I, voluntarily get hurt by other people, like just to, learn something. But it's truly like, to me, it's been the most, I didn't even talk about this, but the ego aspect of it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You can't have ego in jiu-jitsu. There's no such thing.
No.
You will cry right there on the mat if you walk in with your ego. And that's honestly one of the beautiful things about being like a small female in jiu-jitsu. Is like, if you have any ego that you're holding on to at all, you're walking out that door tomorrow because you're not going to get anything out of it. And that's been the best lesson. And I always tell people, like, I think jiu-jitsu is one of the hardest things I've done, including like my master's degree. Like, I don't, it's because it's something you have to show up for every day voluntarily. Like, you are paying a gym money to do something that, it sucks in the moment, but man, those little wins you get along the journey, they're priceless. They're priceless.
Yeah. It's the best simulated struggle that you can produce in your life that'll make every other area of your life easier to handle.
That's a great way to put it.
That's it.
I can agree with that more.
Like, that's what it is. And everyone has to have that one thing in their life, that one thing that they choose to do that's super fucking hard, but they love it. And there's no end game to it. There's no point of destination. There's no, I'm reaching this, then I'm done with it. It's just something that you do for the rest of your life that you love, but it's really fucking hard. Yeah. Whether that's jujitsu, whether that's running 6 miles, whether that's doing Spartan races or Tough Mudders or rowing 2,000 meters a day or whatever it is, you have to have it because you have to armor yourself for the rest of your life because things will knock you down. There will be moments in your life where you feel like you don't know if you can get up, but you've done this thing, this hard thing so many times that's taught you that you can get up no matter what. And now you're in this real life situation where things are on the line and you're like, I don't know if I can get up. But then your brain kicks in, your body kicks in, your muscle memory kicks in. You're like, no, I fucking can get up. And that's what it is. And if you choose not to do anything like that, then life is going to be harder than it already will be, regardless if you don't do the thing or not.
Absolutely.
It's like, well, that's it. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, you're raising your mental pain threshold, in every way. And like, I think the beauty of that being something physical and not just something mental that you do every day too is like, physicality and being on like having that adrenaline, that fight or flight kick in, that clears your head. And that's something that most people don't have throughout the day. And so if you have something where you're focused on physically evading a hard situation, then the mental comes along with it in other areas of your life, I feel like. And, you know, a lot of people don't have that opportunity, and, you know, mental may be your only option. But I always tell people, like, I think everyone should get involved in some sort of physical activity that really pushes them, not just for obvious health reasons, right? But also for the mental fortitude that provides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100% agree. Full throttle.
Yeah.
No doubt. I'd like to transition here away from jiu-jitsu into something you've posted on social media quite a bit about the menstrual cycle and women training through the menstrual cycle. So obviously I don't know anything about this.
Woo.
So I would love to hear your expertise on this.
I love to talk about this.
Great. It's super important.
It's so important. Like 50% of our population is females, and nobody teaches us this. Not a single person, right? The extent of like the education that goes on in schools is like, women get periods once a month. It's like, okay, cool.
That's really all they tell you?
That's all anybody's taught. And I went to an all-girls high school, like one of the best in the country, and I was so blessed to go there. But even then, like, we didn't have any sort of education. And I'm not talking about sex ed. Sex ed is different. We need education on menstrual cycles for men and women, because this affects everybody. I think a great place to start is just the difference between men and women hormonally, right? Men operate on a 24-hour hormonal cycle with testosterone. It's very simple. It's very predictable. It's beautiful. You know, rises with the sun, goes down with the night, rinse and repeat, right? The 40-hour work week is based on the male hormonal cycle. It just makes sense. It's very systematic. It's very straightforward. Every day can look the same. If you look at the best productivity, you know, guides and the best guidelines for that, it's repeat the same thing every single day. And I think women have gotten very lost in this conversation. I don't know where this happened, but women run on a 28-day hormonal cycle. So we have fluctuations that look like that all month long. And so what that means is, I don't know if you've ever experienced like the feeling of low testosterone, but that's the feeling we have every single day, right? Like we don't wake up with like a vigor to go get like on a daily, I'm saying generalizing, right?
Right.
Women don't have that same sort of like drive at the same parts of the day like men do. Instead, you know, with when our period starts, that's day 1 of the menstrual cycle. We have rising estrogen, and estrogen slowly rises until we get to the follicular phase. When the bleeding ends, that's when we feel our best usually. And then ovulation happens. We get a tiny bump in testosterone. It feels amazing. You can ask any woman. They're like, for 1 week a month, I feel like I can do anything. I feel like I'm the baddest bitch out here. Like I can get anything done. I can, you know, I'm the most attractive person in the world. Like I can do anything. I'm super social, super energetic. And then you hit the luteal phase, which is where everything tanks. Testosterone tanks, estrogen tanks, and your progesterone climbs. Progesterone can lead to a lot of the PMS symptoms that a lot of people are familiar with, the, you know, moodiness or the bloating or, you know, sadness, fatigue, things like that, especially fatigue. And then, you know, rinse and repeat. You start the whole process over again. And so literally every day looks different for a woman.
Wow.
Every day in the month looks completely different for a woman. And I think the biggest harm that we've done in not talking about this is to women. Because if you're anything like me, like I said, I'm a very type A person, like perfectionist. On some day, like, and you know, without getting too much information, I've had really bad PMDD recently, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is 2 weeks out of the month, that last 2 weeks of your cycle, you have like major like depression, major anxiety, major fatigue, to the point where it's debilitating and you feel like you can't do anything. And, you know, a lot of people learn to work around it, and I have as well. And thankfully there are like, you know, a lot of natural ways to remedy that. Of course, getting your hormones checked, things like that. But it's really freaking hard when literally half of my life, I feel like shit. You know what I mean? And the other half, I'm great. But it's like, how do you balance that in your life? And so where this really got me, right, like, so going back a little bit, I think this is especially harmful to women who look, you know, compare on social media and, you know, want to do that it girl lifestyle and want to like be a girl boss or be super productive and this and that. And they're like, why do I feel like I literally can't move some days, right? Like, why do I feel like the laziest couch potato in the world? And I feel like, you know, you sit there and you blame yourself and you're like, I'm a shit person because I can't do anything and I can't be consistent. Where you look at that hormone cycle, you're like, women are not designed to be consistent. We are literally not designed to be consistent. And I think that's one of the biggest disservices that this whole, you know, Western perspective at work has done to women. That and the lack of, you know, knowledge about it. We haven't even had really good research about it, to be honest. And this is really what spurred me is when I was getting my master's. I got my master's in exercise physiology, right? So you think physiology should include women, right?
Right.
There was no women included in research studies until like 1990. And even then, research since then has been so limited, and the only extent that they'll include women is if they can control for menstrual cycle. So there's been very little research on the actual effect of the menstrual cycle on our brains and our bodies. And so now the research is starting to come out of how much of a difference these hormones make on us. So that's just like, day-to-day stuff that I've talked about so far. As you can imagine, a lot of it is exercise, exercise is huge. Exercise has everything to do with your physiology. So your exercise is going to be heavily impacted by your hormones. And I didn't know anything about it because I wasn't taught anything about it after a degree in exercise physiology, where we didn't even talk about hormones, the effects of, female sex hormones. And I would compete some days and I'd be like, well, I've had 3 bangs and I still feel like I want to go to sleep. I'm hyped up on caffeine, but I can't move. And I just got crushed, like the worst that I ever have in my entire life. And then next month I'll go to a tournament at a completely different time in my cycle and I'll feel like amazing. And I got silver in one of my tournaments. That was great. And then I started realizing that maybe there's a correlation between these things. And that's really what sent me on my rabbit hole. So since then, I've kind of made it my mission not only to bring this to people's attention, but to be a coach that females can come to be able to work with their menstrual cycle. Because it's not something that I think women should like not talk about and, be this like hush hush taboo thing. Like male and female coaches, they're seriously doing everybody disservice when they're not educated on this.
Yeah.
Because when it's something that's so serious that it completely affects our entire lives, how could you not consider it an exercise? You know what I mean? And that can completely change anybody's experience with exercise. I truly believe that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you looked into how birth control affects this?
Yeah, birth control is female castration. I learned that from Dr. Stephanie Estima. I would highly recommend checking her out. She's a chiropractor who devoted her life to, or has now devoted her career to women's hormonal issues and everything with that. And she made a really good point that was like, if a male were to walk into their doctor's office and say, I'm struggling with acne, would the doctor ever give him a testosterone blocker? Literally never, right? Why would you want to do that, right? And a lot of people don't realize that, especially oral contraceptives, so like the birth control pill, it literally prevents ovulation. And ovulation is the entire basis for this cycle that happens on a monthly basis. It is what all of our entire body is created to do, is to, ovulate so we can reproduce after a certain age, right? And so when you prevent ovulation, you're throwing off all of these hormones in your body. And estrogen is really special because we actually have estrogen receptors in like every single organ in our body. It's not like it just affects your cycle. No, it affects your entire body. And so that's why you'll hear about women having these crazy symptoms when they're on the pill or off the pill.
Yes.
And to me, it's just ever since I've learned that, it's been like, why are we giving women hormonal contraceptives? Why are we trying to give them synthetic hormones to alter the process of their body? And thankfully we have some like non-hormonal contraceptive options now, but that's only very recently. And think about how many lives have been affected by this and how many women have been put on oral contraceptives since a very young age. God only knows what impact that had on their bodies because we don't have the research to back it. The studies that are done to get it approved by the FDA are very short term compared to like a lifetime, right? So that blows my mind. It blows my mind that the medical community is still so okay with it.
Yeah, I've watched a few podcasts recently on one of my favorite podcasts called Modern Wisdom, and the guy Chris is the host, has brought on a few doctors who were studying this very thing, women doctors who were studying how not good it is for women. Yeah. Obviously when it was created, it gave women more freedom, right? That was the whole point. Right. Like, so now there's no risk of getting pregnant all of the time. You can go and do and live a life or whatever you choose to do, right? All that stuff is great. But we're now in 2023 where we have like very smart people who can figure out things that can be better for the woman's body, that don't screw them up hormonally for the rest of their life. Because some people I know got on these oral contraceptives when they were 14, 15, 16 and didn't get off until they were 28, 29, 30 years old. I don't know if I've ever taken anything for that long in my life. And anything, even if it's really good for you, has some effect. I can't imagine. So I'm glad that people are like actually doing the work now to figure it out, and more information is being presented to people and young girls and doctors that there can be a different option. Like, I don't know what it is. But yeah.
Yeah, and what kills me too is like coming out of the research community, I was honestly appalled at how lazy researchers are.
Really?
And that's the only reason we haven't included it in exercise physiology, is because to have to control for, like, say you're doing a study with 20 women, to have to control menstrual cycle for 20 women, it's a lot. And so just because of the sheer headache of it, which is very, it's really sad, but just for that reason alone, researchers have, struggled to include women and still struggle to do so. And that really breaks my heart, because it's like, if they don't do it, who are we trusting to do this research? And I'm so glad you said, there are people who are doing it, because I know there are a select few, but I'll have to listen to that podcast because I'm so interested. And I really want to support those people,
Yeah, I'll send you the link. Yeah. It's actually the ladies from TCU.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've been meaning to email her to try to get her on this podcast, which would be awesome. But she's done, like, after she did that podcast, she did because that's a pretty big podcast. She's done like a couple other big ones. Cool. So I don't know if she's too
cool
for this up and coming show.
No, she should be honored.
But yeah, I mean, I'll drive to TCU right now to have a conversation with her so I can learn. I would basically just ask her to teach me. Yeah. Because I want to learn more. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really affects everyone.
Anything else you want to say about any of that stuff?
I think everybody should make it a priority to learn more, men and women, because most men have women in their lives.
Yeah.
And if you have a woman in your life, then it's worth understanding.
Right.
A coach in any respect needs to understand that too. Any coach who's working with women. I kind of wish I could tell Ricardo some days, like, hey, my hormones are really awful. Like, please give me a break today. But, you can't, because nobody knows about this stuff. So I'm so glad we're talking about it. And I really hope, it helps to raise awareness of some people, some people who may never had a conversation about it. Just educate yourself as best you can, That's all any of us can do. And it can make a huge difference when you expect it the least.
Yeah, because for like a young woman, this could impact the way she views herself, right? And how she feels about her body and how she feels about herself and all of the other emotions that she's feeling with being just a young person in this world, which is like, how do I make friends? Do people like me? My body is disgusting. Like, all of these things, And then, so obviously hormones play a deep role in that.
Definitely.
And so if there can be a little bit more education about it, that it's not like there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you are not, like, there's nothing wrong with you. You just have something happening in your body that you have to sort of learn more about, adjust to, and figure out how to deal with it when it comes on.
Yeah.
Like, that's much better conversation to have than like trying to tell someone that they like have an issue or they need to be put in a label or they have this box that they have to fit into and they have to take a bunch of medication to fix it. It's like, yeah, maybe that stuff might be true, whatever. But at least an initial test could be this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I think that might be better.
I totally agree. I wish more healthcare practitioners would talk about it, because unfortunately these days, like you said, you go to a gyno, you tell them your issues, they say you have PMDD, here, take an antidepressant. And antidepressants don't work like that. They don't work for 2 weeks at a time. They are long-term, serotonin, selective serotonin.
Yeah, and they also have a ton of downstream effects too for your body and how you react and how your emotions feel and, exactly. Things they're inhibiting as well. Like, I know that those sorts of mental health medications work really well for a lot of people, but medication cannot be the first step.
Yeah, totally agree. Why aren't we getting our hormones checked? Why isn't that the first step for women, Why do we have to pay out of like through the nose, even with insurance, to get our hormones checked? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that should be regular data that you can able to see, because it's you. This is what's happening inside of your body.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm go see a functional medicine doctor, if you can, because it'll make a world of a difference. But That's really that. Just
Okay.
more people need to know. We need to, raise awareness. More science needs to be done.
Yeah.
So.
All right, we got one more topic for this evening.
Let's go.
Are you feeling good? It's 8:30.
Yeah, let's go.
You want some water now?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I didn't drink out of this, so.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
You're so sweet.
So now you can drink now.
Okay, yeah.
Get you hydrated. Because I feel like you're gonna. You have a lot to say on this next subject.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So, dating in 2023. I know at one point you had a boyfriend. Mm-hmm. Do you still have a boyfriend?
Yes, we got back together.
Great.
Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. What are your just initial top level thoughts on dating in the modern world?
What a nightmare. What a nightmare. I've had a really interesting love life because I was with this same guy from when I was 15 years old. We were high school sweethearts. We went to college together until I was 21. And great guy. We really grew apart and grew.
You're what, 24 right now?
Yes. Yeah, so that was 3 years ago, right during, actually we broke up during the pandemic. But that, and then I met my current boyfriend. And so I've really only been in I had one relationship in between, but I've mostly been in long-term committed relationships. And I've been very lucky that I haven't had to date because, oh my God, the couple times that I did get on a dating app, that stuff's awful. I don't understand my generation's approach with dating. I really don't. It's all hookup culture these days. That's all it is anymore. And it used to be more I feel like, of course you expect that more from men because I feel like, obviously men's brains work differently, different perspective towards, hooking up and stuff like that. But women are like that now too. I don't get it. And this may be very controversial, but I'm not afraid to speak my mind on it. And I will speak it to whoever will listen. But I feel like we've just gone so far away from this idea of partnership and, love in relationships, and we've gone over to who can screw the other person over better. So many people have gotten hurt and, hurt people, and it's just become this vicious cycle of, girls wanting to be city girls and wanting to get out there as much as they can and use men for their money and walk away, and men are like, well, if women are going to be like that, then screw them, we're going to do the same thing back to them, and it's just this vicious cycle back and forth and back and forth. And I really think a lot of it, I think it, I've listened to a lot of interesting podcasts, and I'd love to pick your mind about the masculinity crisis, because I think the strongest wave of feminism and the most modern wave of feminism has definitely led to from what I've heard from talking to men in my life, has led to a masculinity crisis, from even talking to my own father, who said, I didn't even know if I was supposed to propose to your mother because feminism, right? We're equal, right? And I think it comes from this place of, and I went to a high school I went to all girls high school, super feminist, right? And nothing wrong with feminism in the sense of equality, or I should say equity, but I think that's where the mix-up comes from, right? We've gone from this idea of women having equity in society and having equal opportunity to live as a person and to, live their best life. We've gone from that to, a woman should be able to do everything a man can do. And the one thing that changed my mind about this, right, coming from a very feminist high school, was studying physiology and realizing men and women are not the same. They will never be the same, right? And I know you had a podcast about the trans athletes in sport.
Sure did.
A lot of it, comes down to the same issues. It's no matter how you look at it, the difference between men and women is so much more than testosterone versus lack of testosterone. The whole way that a male and female's bodies and brains are developed are entirely different. Understanding that men think differently than women think, I think, is the very first step. Not only do I think women should not be doing everything a man can do just because, and vice versa, right? In that whole debacle, I think there's a lot of internalized misogyny amongst women in hating their own femininity, right? I think women have been brought up to think, if we don't operate like a man, we're lesser and we're seen as lesser. Whereas every man I've talked to has said, no, I value you as a woman because you're a woman, right? Because of the things I can't make a baby, right? Like
It's fucking incredible.
right? Like it is incredible. It's so beautiful.
It's a fucking miracle.
It's so beautiful. And the perspective these days, you know, whether it's subliminal or not, is like, well, is that all I'm good for? Like, I can do more than that. And I just think that's such a shame. I think we've lost touch with what we really want deep down, right? If you ask like most women, I honestly don't know a single woman who would say like, I don't want, you know, the door open for me or my dinner paid for, or to be taken care of, or my man to get me something off a high shelf and lift heavy things for me, right? Like, and all of that I think is rooted in like a very positive, you know, masculine personality and lifestyle for men, right? But when women are trying so hard to take this masculine role over, it leaves no space for men to have that role anymore. And it's just a vicious cycle that continues. And then women are like, why aren't you planning dates? Why aren't you taking initiative? Why aren't you? And turn into this nagging, mothering situation, and it's further emasculating, and the cycle just continues. And so I really think that the root of our dating issues as a society come from that, from this lack of polarity between men and women. And of course I'm speaking to, you know, heterosexual relationships, but I think that's the majority, so that's what I'll speak to. That's what I've experienced with. And so I think, you know, first thing, understanding that men and women are completely different. We think different. And I think that if we allowed space for polarity back into our relationships, a lot of the issues that we all face would dissolve. And that's what I've personally experienced in my life too.
Yeah, it's become a zero-sum game. Like if you win, that means I can't win, so that means I have to throw you down so that I can win. Instead of a additive combination where two people elevate each other together. Because, right, women, as you said, have gained equal opportunity in basically the basic rights that they deserve. And over the last 50 years, but now there's been like this over-rotation, this overcorrection into this sort of girl boss era thing where now there's a lot of sexual promiscuity, and that hasn't made it better. Because if you think about it, if the woman is willing to have sex with anyone because she wants to just have more sex and be like a dude, and the guy who lives in his basement with his mom gets to have sex with you, is he going to put in any more effort to become a better man? No, because he already got the thing that he wanted to get. So if you elevate your standards and create this person that you think you are without having to try and be more like a man and want to get a high value man, then those things are additive and they combine to create a good relationship.
Totally.
And also the biggest problem is the idea that men have created this oppressive patriarchy superstructure that is misogynistic, and that everyone that's ever been involved with a man is oppressed and shit, and we've created this society that's totally fucked, and everyone that we're involved with is everything's fucked because we've created this oppressive superstructure patriarchy thing. Like, that's what young boys are listening to. So they either have two choices to make. One, they believe that, and they become these weak, docile little humans who can't protect you from anything and are afraid of their own shadow. And now when the world is set on fire and inevitably there's something that happens that goes on, there's a war, there's a fire in your house, someone tries to break in, they're not there because they are weak, because we have conditioned them to be that way. Or they take this opposite end, which is like I don't like to use the word toxic masculinity because it doesn't go with masculinity. It's just like some other person over here who's taken the extreme. Like, this is an extreme version, and now he's taken the other extreme where it's like, I'm an egotistical maniac, everything should go my way, I'm the boss of everything, and everyone should just bow down to me. You don't want that person either. But there's only two paths because you haven't created a middle path for the young man. So if you don't like the role models that are now presented for young men, which are like the Jordan Petersons, the Tim Ferrisses, the Jockos, Andrew Tate is a role model, whether you like it or not. He has a large following and a lot of young boys listen to him. If you don't like those role models that are presented for young men, then build more, create more role models that you wish to be for young boys so that they can choose this middle path, which is sort of toggling between both of these fine lines. Like, at some points in my life, I'll have to be soft and kind and gentle and I need to ask for help. That's great. But at some points in my life, I need to be tough. I need to strap my fucking boots up. I need to get shit done. I need to protect my family, or I need to be strong for my family. Not to say there's not a moment where I can't cry and break down, but there's certain points in our life for both of those things. And that's what we have to be teaching the strong man. But if the boy only hears that he's part of an oppressive superstructure patriarchy that's created the worst world we've ever had in history, even though we live in the best society we've ever lived in that's ever existed in the whole world, then what do you think he's going to do? And so then why would he want to be with a woman? That woman already thinks he's an oppressor. He's never even met her yet. He's never done anything. Why would he ask her out on a date? What if she's going to, what? No, don't talk to me. You're a man. Like, this is the society we've created. Not everyone doesn't believe this way, but not a majority, but a minority speak very loudly through these channels about how people should act and respond to these sorts of situations. And it's very detrimental. And there's a crisis. There's a mating crisis. There's more sexless males than there's ever been in the whole world. And I know, whatever, men shouldn't be having as much, but that's a problem. That means they're not going out and pursuing women. That means they're not going out and pursuing things. Like, most of the time, men start working out because they want to look better for girls. That's a motivating factor to get them out of the house and start doing things and learning more and educating themselves, learning how to speak and dress and work out. All of these things have long-term effects, because eventually we wear out of that stuff and we're like, I just want to do it because I like it now. Originally, my motivator was to get more girls, but there's an extension of all of these things. And now I'm becoming a capable, confident young man whose ability to produce and do things in the world is substantial, not just sitting on the couch on OnlyFans, jerking off, like, because it's fine. Like, how is that good for anyone? Yeah. And so the dating market reflects that, because guys are scared to talk to girls because they don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come of it, because they're oppressors, and women are more promiscuous than they've ever been, but they're usually using it for sort of OnlyFans type reasons. And they're looking for like this high value man who only exists for like 1% of the population. And then girls aren't thinking about, they're only thinking about what the man can offer them, not what values they can offer to a man. So they're not building themselves up in that way either. And the man isn't either. So we're not meeting at the peak. We're at this meeting in the muck down here, and we're just fighting with each other the whole time, instead of being like, we can be elevated together. And so that's what I believe in, like a very small nutshell.
Like, you literally put all my ideas together. That's like literally perfect. And like, I don't know, a little bit more on the female perspective. Like, I just think it's so wild that, like you said, the women are like, naturally we're nurturers. Like, women are nurturers. Like, me, I don't know about like other women, but me, out of the womb, I was like, what can I do for you? Like, what can I give to you? I've always been that way with my partners. That's what I love to do. But, you know, you hear so many women are like, oh, don't do this and do that until this and that. It's just become a game, right? Like, dating's just become this game for women and men, and women especially, because women know that men have something. Women have something men want, right? And they're like, oh, instead of actually, you know, seeing what I want in my life and actually trying to pursue that and find somebody who, you know, matches what I want and being genuine with them, I'm going to play games with my sexuality with them because I know they're going to fall head over heels for it. And that's all that's going to matter. And it's like, okay, what do you expect to be the end result when that's the game that you're playing, right? It doesn't make sense to me anymore. It really doesn't. And I don't even know. I've only heard this conversation happen in very small circles. I don't know about you, but I just don't know what the solution is. I don't know how to get this out to more people. I don't know how to find people who are willing to listen, right? Like, so many of my friends aren't even willing to, you know, think about the fact that men and women think differently, because I feel like the feminism, the feminism narrative right now, right, is, you know, everybody's equal, everybody should be equal, men and women are the same, when that's just inherently not true. And I look back and I'm like, how did we get here as a society, right? It's just a pendulum swinging. The pendulum swung too far to, you know, at the time when women were actually, you know, unable to have a bank account, unable to get a mortgage, unable to go to school, right? Swung from that extreme to now the extreme of nobody knows what the heck is going on. You know, men are being emasculated left and right. Women don't care. Women won't stop to listen. Women won't stop to give consideration to the fact that maybe now they're the oppressors, right? Because this narrative that's been fed to us. and you know, it's just gone so far off of what it was supposed to be, and that really breaks my heart. I'm very lucky to be with a partner who, you know, agrees with that, and we talk about this all the time. But you know, so few people are having this discussion, and I'm convinced that 95% of relationship issues come from this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People have to have a discussion about this. And it's so funny to think about masculinity when people are like, the masculine man is the problem. And that's the opposite. Mm-hmm. You should be way more afraid of the weak man. Because the weak man is the one that sits in his basement at home, resentful and bitter and planning shit. He's like, they fucked me over. I'm this man. I'm bitter. I'm resentful. I have nothing to do and nothing to live for, and I'm going to go fuck shit up. Instead of empowering men to be masculine in their masculine energy, mixed with some feminine energy. That's where the strongest men are. But in their masculine energy, like becoming the most dangerous men they can be while choosing to have it under voluntary control. That is what you want. If you're afraid of that man, you should be deeply afraid of the other side of the coin, where it's the weak man who's bitter and resentful and doesn't have anything under voluntary control and is willing to do whatever it takes to get whatever sort of revenge he thinks is possible. You want this man. You want the competent, confident, dangerous, not in a violent sense, but capable of violence if necessary, because sometimes it is necessary to protect the ones you love the most. Don't be too naive to think that that's never going to happen to you, or you're never going to be put in that sort of situation. God willing, I hope you never are, but maybe you're with someone who's willing to protect you or has the chutzpah to protect you, but then has it under voluntary control. So when you guys are hanging out or on the couch or at dinner, he's just relaxed, chill, and calm, and he tells you how he feels and what he wants because he's learned to trust you on an emotional state. A lot of guys don't want to be vulnerable with women because they have this perceived notion that women will view them differently because of that. And a lot of women do. I've heard a lot of women say, if my man cries in front of me, he's no longer tough masculine man to me anymore, and I don't find him physically attractive, and the sex goes out the window. Well, how does that make us feel? That means we have to bottle everything in all of the time, no matter what. But we also can't be tough and dominant. We have to bottle everything in. We can't ask for help. And there's so many different things we're playing at here. And everyone just thinks we have this like normal, easygoing, everything comes to us. We're fine. We're men. It's all good. We have lots of struggles, just like I know women have tons of struggles now, especially in today's society where everything is up in the air. You don't know gender roles. You don't know what from what. You don't know what you should do or how you should go about or if this or that, right? But the man, like, we want to be able to express our vulnerabilities to you. We want to be able to show that side to you, but we have to know when you hold that stuff in your hand that you're not going to step on it and pour it in our fucking face. They're going to see us still as this masculine man who has the display of feminine energy because he trusts you. Yeah. Because he trusts you. And if you can build that relationship on trust and on cooperation and on negotiation and on a partnership, there's no more fruitful relationship you can ever have in your life, except maybe if you have a kid. I haven't had a kid yet, but that's what people tell me. But right now, my current relationship is the most fruitful relationship I've ever had in my whole life because we have that. Not to say that we have a perfect relationship. That doesn't fucking exist. But at least we have a negotiation. We have cooperation. We have mutual respect for one another, and we can get through these sorts of situations. So you have to start viewing those things in a more complex, nuanced way than he's a man, he does this. She's a female, she does this. Yes, there's some roles and some ingrained things that we're born to do evolutionarily, that's what our nature is, and we have to respect those things. We have to respect reality, what's true, what our genes are, all of that stuff. We also have to understand that there's a nuance to it, and when you build a relationship, you can grow those complexities and those nuances. But if you just say men are all shit and all they've done is shit, then that's what they're going to think, and that's what society is going to be built to. We're going to have a weak society, and that's what it's going to be. And is that what you want? I don't think so. If you really, really, really think about it, if you actually think about it, instead of just being conditioned to think about what you're being told to think, instead of actually thinking about what is correct for you and be willing to pay the consequences of saying that or acting that out or doing that thing, then I think you're going to come to the same conclusion that we come to right now.
Man, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's
So.
absolutely perfect. And the challenge with that is that what this requires is for both parties to be able to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's willing to be vulnerable anymore. Not a single person is willing to take the first step, right? Women aren't willing to take the first step back and step into their feminine and be like, I'm going to give you the opportunity for you to take the lead, for you to take the initiative. I'm going to trust you enough to let you do that, because women want to control everything and they want to, have everything go their way. And, oh, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Why was my proposal like this? Why wasn't, are you going to let him lead, or are you just going to dictate everything? Because if you're with a man you can't trust to lead, why are you with a man at all? You know what I mean? And then vice versa, like you said, right? Like so many men, it's so sad to hear, I've been scarred by hearing women who don't want to be with men who, display feminine capability or feminine energy, that knowledge of their emotions and awareness of their emotions and crying and expression. That's a fundamental human necessity, right? And you hear so many stories of all of these things happening, and it's so heartbreaking, right? And it's like, you have to, I think women, honestly, like from my perspective, I think women, I think we've started this recent issue that we have, right? This is not to speak to the entire feminism wave or anything like that, but at least modern feminism, I think, is very much to blame for what's happening. And I think women need to take accountability. We need to take responsibility, be willing to take a step back. Because if we want the kind of men that we describe, like that we want, exactly like you said, right? I couldn't have said it better than you did. Then we need to provide space for that. And right now, women are taking up that space. They're just sitting there, they're occupying those seats, and they're like, why aren't you sitting here? Why am I sitting here instead? Well, the seat wasn't empty in the first place. How do you expect somebody to rise to the occasion when the occasion doesn't exist, right? And that requires vulnerability. That requires me being willing to say, like, hey, this might go south, but like that's something I'm willing to do to see if this relationship is going to work out and be the relationship that I want to have. And like you said, I've also experienced the same thing. It's only that experience of polarity in a relationship where I've had, the deepest and most fulfilling relationship of my life with my partner. And we've both been able to share so many ideas and thoughts and have conversations like these that I've never been able to have with anybody before. And the effect that has had on both of us in understanding the opposite gender have been so much more profound than any conversation I ever had about feminism. And that's the truth of it. Because nobody ever told me, hey, maybe you should sit down and listen to a male's perspective, right? Like, no, what I was taught is men have it so easy and we have it so hard. And how dare you say that you don't have it easy and that there's a masculinity crisis? What are you talking about? The world is built for you. No, like, take a step back. Like, that's not how this stuff works. And it's only through those deep conversations a lot of times that we can only have with our partner that really can help us teach us those things. So I'm very grateful for that experience, but I really hope that's something more people can have. I think we're both very, very blessed to be in relationships like that.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm listening and trying to have more of these conversations on this podcast. And the one I told you about before, Chris, on Modern Wisdom, he talks about this a ton. So you should watch that one. But
for sure.
But eventually we'll get that dating roundtable together, because I want different perspectives with people who are at different parts of their lives and where people feel they are at. And so hopefully we can get that roundtable sorted out, because you're definitely coming on for round 2.
I'm excited.
So you crushed this one.
Oh, thank you.
You crushed it.
So
Okay, I have one more question for you. Final question of the evening. If you were going to put up a billboard and millions of people were going to see that billboard every single day, what would you put on it? This question is stolen from podcaster Tim Ferriss, by the way. Didn't come up with it.
I might need a minute.
Okay.
What did I put up there? I'm really torn. Can I tell you what I'm torn between?
Yeah, please.
Menstrual cycle stuff and the dating stuff. Because I think they're both so important and they both go hand in hand, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, I can only speak to my experience as a woman, but I think women need to reevaluate their mentality, right? Like with everything, whether that's trying to be physically more like a man, and in that running into all of these issues with their hormones trying to tell them, no, that's not you, right? Or socially with all these men who aren't who you want to be dating yet, that's who you're attracting, right? How do I put that in a billboard?
You put something like let's talk about your menstrual cycle, and then a QR code underneath.
I like that. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Yes. Or let's talk about femininity.
Yeah.
I would like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my final answer.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Throw it on a billboard.
Yeah. Throw it on a billboard.
At the end of this is episode 150, by the way. This is a pretty special episode.
I'm so honored.
So at one point, when I have all of the money in the whole world, I'll put up 150 billboards.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But I guess when I have all of the money, it might be episode like 600. So I might have 600 billboards.
You have every billboard in North America.
But it'll be a lot of really cool sayings and a lot of very informative information from very wise people who've been on this podcast.
What's your favorite one so far?
Oh, wow. My favorite is probably mine, which is "You Are Loved," or I like "Elite by Choice, Not by Chance."
I like that.
That was a good one. Lauren Johnson was her name who came up with that. She's a mental performance coach. And I like yours because it's a very interesting topic and it's very fresh in my brain.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm also sitting right here, so that helps, right?
But I also think it's very, very important, super important. Because most people have said like cool phrases, like be inspired is another one, but you want to be informative, which I think is important.
Yeah. A conversation that would change so many lives, I think.
So many. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This is excellent.
I've been so honored to be here, and it's so wonderful to sit here with you. So thank you for having me on.
Round 2 and dating roundtable coming up.
Can't wait.
Cool. Thank you. See you guys.
Yeah. Bye.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But above all else, most importantly, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.